Um, this presentation is entitled Navigating Collegiate Athletic Academics Post-COVID. On the panel with me today will be one of my colleagues, Ms. Ericka Lavender. Again, I'm here at LSU, currently serving as the Associate Director for Football. And Ms. Lavender, she can give her introduction as well. She actually will not have her video on. She's traveling with men's basketball, but she will be a part of the presentation as well. Ms. Lavender?
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't figure out my mute button. Just introduce myself. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. Let me turn my volume up. Technical difficulties over here in the bubble. My name is Ericka Lavender. I'm the Associate Director. I work with volleyball, beach volleyball, and men's basketball. And this is my... Did somebody say something?
I believe somebody was trying to mute themselves.
Oh, okay. This is my second time around at LSU, and I've been back for, I think, maybe a semester, 6 months.
Great. So thank you, Ms. Lavender. So today we want to be really, really interactive. I know COVID has impacted us all in some way, shape, or form. So we really wanted to first start off, we're going to do 3 parts today. So part 1, we want to just talk about, if you all will please put it either in the chat box or use the raise your hand function to just briefly discuss some of the challenges or frustrations that you all have had thus far dealing with COVID as it relates to the workplace. Anyone?
I'll get it started. Just for conversation pace, like I would say the lack of face-to-face contact, and I'll even go a step further. Starting a new job during a pandemic sounds like a great idea until you do it, as you know, Kenyatta. So
Yes.
just the lack of face-to-face and connecting, like the connection with your students and even coaches and even your new colleagues has been a challenge for me. So I don't know, I see people putting stuff in the chat, so we can read some of those.
So yes, I'll go through and I'll read them. One of our colleagues put keeping strong connections. And I think that's very important because we're so used to having face-to-face interaction with everyone and not even being able to see and get that interpersonal interaction, connecting with new students and staff. Yes, that is a big one. Again, Eric and I both started this position within the pandemic, and for me, for sure, it was not being able to really get out on campus, not even being able to come down on a face-to-face interview, doing everything virtually. So those have been challenges. We had a couple other assisting students in adjusting to online classes. Tulane didn't have them prior to COVID. So yes, that was, oh my gosh, my previous institution, that was a big hurdle for us. Being able to pivot at literally in a week's time to go from being face-to-face to everything virtually online, and training the professors, training your students to be able to interact and log onto their classes and complete their assignments. A lot of students at that point didn't have laptops. They didn't have the proper communication skills to be able to even engage into their online classes. So yes, we saw a lot of challenges. Students going in and out of quarantine, disruptions of schedules, interactions seem much more transactional and less ability to build relationships or keep them going. Yes, you guys are absolutely correct. So the first part of it, of course, is just getting those frustrations out, because we're going to have more frustrations as time continues to go on and we get back to what we feel like is a normal state of operation. So part 2 of our presentation is basically preparing for the incoming freshmen post-COVID. As we know, it's been almost 2 years, literally, since students have literally sat in a classroom and had interaction, or that face-to-face interaction with their peers. So one question that comes to mind for us is, will we truly know what those students' academic aptitudes are? Because a lot of times you're going to see transcripts that are completely different from their 9th and 10th grade year from their 11th and 12th grade year. So how do we really prepare those students to come into college once they get here for the fall? One suggestion that we have is really ensuring that we have summer bridge programs and utilizing those summer bridge programs to really get those students up to speed, to where they're able, once the fall hits, they're able to really get a hold of things. So in some instances, some institutions may not have the resources to do that. In that case, really thinking about innovative things that you can do and those touch points that you can make throughout the summertime to ensure that your students you're being able to evaluate them to see, okay, this student may need to have more support in this area in math, or this student really isn't to the level of college readiness that he needs, and our institution doesn't offer any type of courses that will get them up to speed, those remediation courses. Ericka, did you want to add anything to this
Yeah,
question?
I want to add, and I want to kind of go back. I've been kind of manning the chat. That's going to be my role for you. Um, someone put in the chat, one of the challenges, if we can go back to step one, but learning our new freshmen as they come in for the summer. But a big piece is our staff adjusting, coming back in the office, tutors adjusting. I don't know if we can take a quick survey or poll if you want to put it in the chat, or if you want to just use the raise hand. How many institutions have already discussed this and will be back 100 or planning to be back 100% in class, full capacity in the fall? People can either put it, okay, I see, oh, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there's several hands going up. So that within itself is going to be a transition. 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, thumbs up or thumbs down. How many of us are really excited about going back to 100%? Let's be honest. I know working from home in these leggings have been excellent, but that's just a big part of it. So we're trying to adjust, and we're trying to, as staff, wrap our minds around getting back into the swing of things full time. That's going to be a challenge in itself. But then also, to your point, adjusting to our new freshmen. And then don't forget about this population of transfers.
That is true.
So how do we adjust to those? So this is kind of going to be a format. If anybody has any best practices or something that they, that worked for them, or they would just like to share with the group, for sure, put it in a group. And I'm going to take some ideas from the chat and send it out, as best as we can. Oh, Walt Holiday said getting coaches back into a routine, which is another piece of the puzzle. So it's not only full-time staff getting back, the students and as well as the coaches. That's a good point that we didn't mention and think about.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the comments in the chat was, a lot of our first year students are nervous about doing their second year back in class when they only did their first year remotely or online. That is a that's the issue that I think we're starting to see more of, because students may not have performed well that first semester remotely because they were so used to having that interaction. So even with our current freshman group that came in the fall, they came in online, but they were used to, kind of being interactive, but they don't understand how to, or feel the need that they're actually learning in the classroom setting online. So as a result of that, they're not as active in their class sessions. They're not as active in their tutoring sessions because they feel like, okay, I'm just doing this just to do it, versus, okay, this is the new learning platform, and adjusting to it. So for us as professionals, we've had to really be able to pivot to be able to reach out to them and explain, those different ways of learning. And you have to be able to change at a moment's notice and be willing to change to adapt to whatever your surroundings are.
I don't want to call anybody out, but Taylor from Northwestern, you have your hand up. So do you have something you want to share? You certainly can. We don't have to wait to the end to share anything. So if anybody wants to share something, for sure, just raise your hand. Okay, maybe her hand was just up for something else. Okay, sorry, I wanted to give people an opportunity to chime in.
And please, you all, this is interactive, so please chime in, because we're all in this together and we all are having and facing the same challenges. So please chime in with any ideas or any challenges that you all are facing, or what you're planning on doing as it relates to pretty much going back to normal operation in the upcoming semesters. Okay, so silence means consensus. So Carol said coaches also thinking that online courses are easier. Not the case at all. That is so true. That is so true. And a lot of coaches will say, well, hey, put them in an online class. That way I can have more practice time, when it's still the same amount of work that the students have to put in, whether it's an online or face-to-face class.
I think one of the things that I've noticed while you're reading the chat a little bit is with the online classes, the perception of some of the students as well is that it's going to be an easier class. But I found that it is a lot more work. And I don't know if it's just in general, if that course added more, like, I don't want to say busy work, but more content because it is online. But that's been something that a couple of my student athletes have shared with me in terms of part of the struggle is the additional work. And then let's throw in if you have to take an exam through lovely ProctorU. I don't know how many people are familiar with using ProctorU, or if anybody's been able to master ProctorU, please raise your hand and share that with us. How you cannot, at 11:50, your student texting you at night saying they can't get the link in. So that's also another challenge.
Ashley, go ahead, Ashley.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo that. That's where I think that we're seeing a lot of concern, is that the students are, not just disconnected because of the physical space, but disconnected to the content almost in a way, because they're just not used to engaging without the physical conversation of being with your faculty member or being with your peers. And then to your point about that it seems like it's more work, and I think so much of it has to do with the fact that there's no physical touch point to say, well, I have to go to class today, therefore the work has to be done. That they lose that sense of time. I think that's been one of the big things that we saw from students this fall, or so far, especially this semester, with kind of the re-socialization back to sport, but not to the classroom,
Right.
has been this, okay, well, now my priorities are shifted because now I have this in-person touch point that's sport, but I still don't have that in-person touch point with class. And so it's, well, I have plenty of time. And it's like, well, you don't. The time is dwindling away. And so it was just, that was something, that disconnection to the content, but also disconnection to time and kind of reality is a piece of it too.
That is a great point. That is a great point. And I want to use this to segue into a question or a comment from Renee Edwards. We have students that struggle with online learning because of where they are coming from. The state high school system does not use a lot of technology. So in this case, how have you all tried to assist or adjust those students to that new face or facet of learning? I can say for us here at LSU, a lot of the work has been put in from our learning specialist staff and our staff in football of really taking the time. We have a B club, a study hall in the morning called B club, in which the students come at 7:30 in the morning. And so for a lot of the students coming from those places where they don't have the technology, they're able to check out technology to be able to assist them. But in addition to that, being able to sit down with them and actually getting them back on this time management, this structured process, because prior to, they'll sleep all day, show up for practice. They may do some work in high school, but pretty much it's already done at that point. But really getting them back into a structured system of, okay, you have class, you have to study. So you have study hall, you have your learning specialist, you have practice, really getting them back into a regimen to help them understand, like, hey, it is different, it is online, but still preparing them and ensuring that they're getting what they need to out of their academic resources. So we can move on. Does anyone have, Carol, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
I'm gonna just make a statement. I think the other thing that we have to, that I've had to, so I've had, with soccer, who's a fall sport, also moved to spring. But even with the cancellations and having to basically pivot when the teams have to cancel competition due to either them or the team they're supposed to be playing against have to drop and reschedule. So I had a couple of those with women's basketball, and I've had two with softball. So I think that's another thing, because you're trying to get them on the schedule, but then it's a constant change. I mean, even prior to their season, my softball team, they didn't practice as a team. They practiced in several different groups at first. And so trying to schedule tutoring and whatever else around those schedules was, I found, also not just difficult for us in trying to move things around, but again, it goes back to the students not having a stable schedule on a daily basis. And then they're trying to pivot as well and make adjustments.
I agree. And I will say anything, taking anything away from this part of it, something that really resonates with me is always being prepared for the unexpected, and then always being willing to pivot at any moment, because you never know what's coming at you, but being able to pivot so that you're able to be of service and to really, get the students on board, as well as the coaches and other staff, other administrators on board to, hey, this is the plan. We're used to going this way, but at this point, we have to pivot and go this way to ensure that all the resources are still available and they're able to succeed. So lastly, part 3, we wanted to discuss, again, how to prevent burnout as a result of the challenges that we face with COVID now and post-COVID. I think it's very important that we really, really, as professionals, establish those healthy boundaries to ensure that, hey, if I'm leaving here at 6 o'clock, then I'm at home, I'm cutting off work and really just taking time for myself at 7. Really establishing those boundaries to where we're able to recuperate, refresh ourselves for that next day. Really taking time to use those value learned lessons. I think there are a lot of lessons that were gained from this COVID era. There's a lot of negativity, but a lot of lessons learned too. In the area of, for me, I think it's very important at this point to have those hybrid days throughout the week, to where you're able to still do your work, do well, but you're able to also stand back and, refresh yourself a little bit from being in the grind in the office every day. Ericka, did you want to add anything to this portion?
I am totally not the example, as you just yelled at me. It is tough to kind of carve out those boundaries, but they are needed. I know our staff, we kind of do a good job kind of checking in on each other and making sure that we're not staying in office too late, because you can get in the habit of just staying at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, or when you're working from home, if your office is your dining room, it's easy to hear that ding on your email and just get up and check it. And then you're an hour in working, you're texting kids and then they're responding to you. So it is very important. If anybody has a magic, I guess, potion to kind of get that carved in, but it is very tough. I try to get myself in a routine, but again, as Carol mentioned and other people I'm sure have experienced, just the changing in terms of your teams being quarantined, maybe people in your office being quarantined, maybe you had to be quarantined. Trying to get that routine in terms of your hybrid schedule versus coming in the office every day. I know there's a lot of people on this call, some names are familiar, that are also in school themselves. I happen to be one of those individuals. So trying to carve that time out. When do you do your own schoolwork and work and take time for yourself? So I definitely agree that it's important, just taking baby steps, trying to get there.
Okay, so does anyone have any comments or anything that they would like to add at this point? Ms. Walker?
So this topic is a little sensitive to me, so I definitely learned from the fall semester. So, I think taking, and my boss, you got to take care of you. And I said, I think during the pandemic, the one thing that I learned is that asking for help is okay. And letting people know if you're overwhelmed, so you can get that assistance. And so I'm not very good at asking for help. But now I am at this point and being more vocal about it, because you do continue to work. And then also you're trying to also not just make it better for you, but making things better, easier for your students, easier for your coaches. And it's easy to forget yourself. And what you said, setting those boundaries, and communicating that can't happen today, unless it's something that's, dire straits that you need to get done. But I just, some people, it sounds selfish, but I mean, as Walt tells me all the time, if you don't take care of you, then you can't do anything else. So that's one of the lessons I've learned during this pandemic, is just making sure I communicate and asking for help.
Renee Edwards, Mississippi Valley State University. I'm going to piggyback on what Carol has said. I don't work, I guess, day to day, every day, but my first 15 years, I kind of have oversight of the academic unit right now. And we'll go back in a little hands-on because we're down a couple of counselors. But as she said, communication is key. And a lot of times, the coaches and even sometimes students are looking for quick answers, and they're not quick answers. Okay, so you have to prepare as much as possible in that, and be okay with doing, everything you can for that day, and understanding at the end of the day, it is that of the student responsibility. And depending on what type of institution you're at, that pressure may seem a little bit different. Being a Power 5 BCS is, gotta hit it. Whereas, sometimes a little bit, laid back, smaller FCS, a limited resource, you have to kind of pick and choose your battles of what you're dealing with, because you do have sometimes other responsibilities. But having a good game plan as far as, managing your time and a good setup for those students, help with that. But as Carol said, sometimes you have to ask for help. And also, again, have the coaches more involved with it, because you can't feel like you have to have the support. You can't feel like you're a disciplinarian and that you got to make them do it. That's not your role as disciplinarian. You're there as a help for that. And that discipline, or the students not performing, that is the responsibility of the coach for those consequences.
I agree. Thank you, Carol and Renee, for those sentiments. I think a lot of times too, we're so service driven. We want to serve, but then there's never any time for us. And that's where we get to the burnout state, or we get to the state to where we're not as productive as we were when we first started. So really taking that time to have those refreshers too. I mean, even if it's, hey, I just need to go sit down and lay on someone's couch and just lay out everything. Those things are very important, because we take so much in on a daily basis, from the students to the coaches to coworkers and everything. So it's really being able to carve out a time where it's just you and you're able to refresh yourself.
I would piggyback off of all of that and just kind of wrap up by saying, I think this, year and a half of the pandemic has been extremely challenging for all parties involved. But I think as the academic world, when it got shut down last March, I can remember the day we got sent home to work, where other departments weren't able to work because there was no sporting goods going on. So we've been going strong. So number one, I want to commend everybody and give everybody a round of applause for that, because we kept working throughout that, and we haven't had a break. Our normal summers where we could take some time off, we weren't able to. So I would say hang in there, keep fighting a good fight. And as Carol mentioned, reach out for help and ask for help when you need it. We are, even though we're all in different conferences at different schools, at the end of the day, we're one big family, and it's like kind of 6 degrees of separation. We all know one another at some point, or a touch point. So don't be afraid to reach out. This is why Kenyatta and I wanted it to kind of be just a talking and not just a PowerPoint you're staring at. We wanted it to be kind of more interactive, and folks kind of sharing their thoughts, their frustrations. This is kind of like Vegas. yes, we are recording it, but we're not going to send it out, that, too much. So if you wanted to share something that may have worked for you, didn't work, or something that is still kind of lingering, a topic that we didn't hit on, please share that for the group. But I just wanted to say thank you to everybody on this call, especially the academic world, because we have been grinding hard for about a year now.
So jumping back into the chat box, Ms. Hull said, another concern, students getting comfortable falling back on the pass-fail grading options when that will likely go away in upcoming terms. It's been very liberal at her particular campus. Ms. Hull, would you like to speak a little more in depth about that? If you don't mind.
Yes, Ms. Hull would like to speak.
Thanks, Ericka. Throw me on blast. No, at our campus last semester, they were able to pass fail every course. And should you fail a class, that does not count on your GPA at all. And then these last 2 semesters, they're allowing them to do that for at least 2 classes. So I feel like we're getting students who are being very complacent and just going ahead from the start and picking classes that they're just going to switch those to pass fail. So let's just not put any effort in on those courses. So getting them to understand that likely is not going to be the case in the future, and let's change those habits now, is something that we're struggling with.
Yeah, I think that is a big challenge. I think we still have that. They still have that mindset here, and we're not using pass fail this semester. They extended our withdrawal date. So it's the last day of class. They can actually, before final exams start, they can decide whether to keep the class or drop out of it. But I think there's little birdies going around, and now the new thing is, well, I'm just going to get a COVID waiver.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to throw Renee out there on there. I'm going to throw you out there, Renee.
Actually, I was just about to say that. I was like,
Yeah. So your thoughts from that compliance world, I'm telling my kids, no, it's not a guarantee, but then, they're hearing, oh, I heard my friend at this school, this is what they're saying. So just trying to have those conversations, and should those conversations come from us in the academic world, just kind of how to address those.
It needs to come from, I guess, academics and the compliance world for that. And, they may be hearing from a friend that, their sports season was moved to the spring instead of the fall, and understanding that that waiver right now is only being able to be used one time. Depending, you would have to say compete. So those that use it in the fall, they don't have the luxury of, say, using it in spring. And to be honest, the talk is that it's going to go completely away. Next year, you're going to have to go through the NCAA normal waiver process. And then, of course, you're in the hands of, the AMA staff and getting that information and what's, building your case. So that's kind of like, it's going to be going into a courtroom. That's kind of how I explain it to my coaches and those student athletes that, hey, we use it this time, you're playing this spring. However, if you come back around, it's not like, well, I felt like this or I felt like that. My dad lost his job and I had to do, X, Y, and Z. Well, you're now going to have to produce that documentation. We're going to have to see, the termination letter. You're going to have to produce, pay stubs, things of this nature, to let them understand that we were able to do some things in-house that were different with your letter, your statement, your academic plan. Okay, you can go with, appropriate signatures, but if it comes around again, it's going to be much more difficult and it's not going to be there. So you're putting your not only playing time at stake, maybe your scholarship, might not even being in school if your GPA is too low. So again, there are a lot of factors that you need to use on those scare tactics, but also put that into the hands of the coaches, and also talking about, the APR factor, with that. And they want to come back like, well, they've kind of put a moratorium for 2 years. I'm like, but it's going to come back. And you don't want to be in a situation when you come back off that now you're at a postseason ban and those type of things. So you got to have to constantly have that communication, not only with the student athletes, but also with your coaches, to have them to understand that you got that one-time pass, but we've got to work to be in a position where it's not going to hurt you long-term. Do you want them now, or do you want them, say, in the fall, in our case, when we're playing, or say that following spring?
Yes, thank you for that. I think Angie wanted to add something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on top of all of that, something else we're struggling with that just happened was with the NCAA waiving the need to be enrolled in summer classes for football and basketball to have summer CARA So those of us who are, struggling financially may choose not to fund those classes for students. So therefore not having those extra buffer hours to help with academic eligibility, and then putting more pressure on fall and spring performance. So it's just another thing adding on to already struggling situations.
Right.
Anybody else? I would say Ashley, I'm not calling you out, Ashley, RIPP. That was so sweet of your son. That's one thing I do enjoy about the Zoom. You've got to, when you're in a Zoom meeting and you're meeting with people in their living rooms and their houses, you got to see, you know what? They're human. We're human.
Yes. I'd love to just going back to kind of what you guys were talking about earlier about kind of taking care of yourself and setting those boundaries. He's 9, and we were talking about the other day, like, what makes you feel loved, and how do we express love now that we're all home and we're all like stressed? And he goes, well, every day when I come home from school, I want a hug. And so on Thursdays and Fridays, it's like, whether you're working or not, like, I need a hug. I need you to just ask me how my day was. And so that's part of that, is like, that's his little routine. It's like, I think that when we talk about our student athletes, right, that feeling, that culture of care, and that feeling of, again, providing that love. I was trying to have a conversation with my students, and I was like, I got to have these conversations with my kids too. Like, we need to be like making sure that we're asking, right? Because that's the thing, is like, I didn't know that was bothering him. Like, he's 9, and right. And I'm just starting to think of, I don't know that our athletes like are communicating it unless we ask. And so it was a dual conversation. It was a conversation we were having at home about kind of boundaries and stuff, but it was also this conversation that carried over into work, going like, we got to do a better job of asking. Like, we need to make sure that we're doing our part to say, how are you? Like, where are you right now in this reality, in this moment? When working on saying, not saying, everyone goes, oh, you got to say no more often. We can't be overwhelmed, right? And my dean brought up a really excellent point 2 weeks ago, when I think it was Carol that shared, I expressed that I was overwhelmed and lacking, not motivation, but just the ability to feel like I was doing my job well. And he goes, well, it's not about saying no more often. It's about saying yes if. And I really liked that. And it kind of changed my perspective. Just that little language change was like, yes, if you take care of this, this, and this, then I can step in and help. Or yes, I'll take that on if I drop this committee, right? Because this is now a priority, or whatever that looked like. And I loved that kind of language change. Yeah, that's all.
Actually,
No,
Sorry,
awesome.
I went on a tangent. It was totally.
Thank you. I love that. Yes, if. I'm adding that. Walt, are you on here? Yes, if.
Yes. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to add? I mean, we're loving this, the interaction. Again, we're all a community, and we're only as good as all of us around. And so does anybody else have anything else to add? Because this is great information, great tools, a lot of inspiration that I'm getting from you all in your stories and sharing with us.
Louise, can somebody share more about ProctorU? Only if I'm not recorded. No, I'm just kidding. This is my first time utilizing ProctorU, and basically, and someone jump in and explain it way better than I can, but it is the online, I guess, kind of proctoring site that a lot of instructors will use to conduct their exams in midterms and finals, that the students have to log on. They have to pay, like, schedule a time, a date. They pay a fee. It can be $5, $10, or even $15 for some of their exams. And I've watched outside of the door. I probably wasn't supposed to, but I was watching one of my students, and it is a process. They have to share their screen. They have to kind of show, like, move their monitor around to show that the room that they are in is secure. And I've had students not, like, their room didn't pass if they were in their dorm room or their apartment, because if they were in an open space, let's say in their living room, they will not be allowed to take that exam. So it's just, the reason why I said a problem with it is because I feel like there's like a little man or a little green man that when my students specifically log in, there's always an error or issue with the link or something like that. But I think overall it's doing its job, what it's supposed to do. But I know some students are frustrated with it as well as faculty, but that's pretty much all I can share about ProctorU. Somebody else can chime in if they have a way better way to explain it. I'm going back to the chat just to make sure we were able to address majority of everybody's questions. We talked about the drop deadline to pass, no fail. Summer bridge we talked about just a little bit, just not sure if everybody is still going to be able to run that and if it's going to be virtual, or is anybody doing it all 100% in person, or waiting to kind of see how the coaches dictate if the students are actually coming to campus or not. Does anybody already have their plans in place for that? I'm looking for thumbs or hands or anything. Is everybody kind of still in the think tank space like we are too? Wishing, hoping we had more information so we can plan. We are wait and see. Yep. I think a lot of us are still in the wait and see phase of the summer in terms of summer bridge. We know that we are going to do it in some capacity. Just trying to figure out what that's going to look like and who's going to be available and in person able to get here. Because one thing at LSU, we've just changed. We've gone to 2 summer sessions. So Carol, Jason's on here as well. You guys can share. So we're going to 2 summer sessions. So one will start May 24th through June 26th, and then July 6th through August 9th. So that May 24th session is really quick, and we know a lot of high schools won't be finished or have final transcripts or graduated by then, but I'm sure there'll be students that will want to come and enroll. So just kind of figuring what that looks like. So just more stuff to add to the plan for.
Okay, so if no one else have any questions or any more comments, Michaela, if you would share the QR code. And again, if you guys have any questions in the future or any comments or just want to share anything, just please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you for your attendance today. And hopefully something that was said or presented today that resonates with you all and you all can take something away from this session. Again, thank you for your attendance.